Napoleon. The pint-sized overachiever who rose from bullied island kid to emperor of "I'll take that, thanks." He brought back slavery, bullied the Pope, lost to Russian snow, and turned exile into a sequel. Half genius, half chaos goblin, and massive ego. So grab a seat and maybe a sword, because this is going to be your most interesting history class yet. Welcome to Everything Wrong with Napoleon. Sorry to interrupt, but subscribing is the modern equivalent of declaring yourself emperor. Go on, hit it. Thanks. From Corsican nobody to power-hungry icon. Imagine being such an overachiever that your side hustle is conquering Europe. Born in 1769 on the sunny island of Corsica, just 1 year after it got snatched by France, young Napoleon Bonaparte was basically French by accident. His family was minor nobility with zero power, but little Napo had ambition much taller than he actually was. He rode the chaos of the French Revolution like a kid on a sugar high, flipping sides, dodging guillotines, and charming his way into military promotions like a walking LinkedIn success story. His big break was suppressing a royalist revolt in Paris with a whiff of grape shot, or, blasting them with cannons. That earned him hero status and the keys to the political kingdom. By 1799, he pulled a full political heist, staged a coup, and declared himself first consul. Something like a modern-day president. The self-crowned emperor. Most people let someone else crown them. Tradition, humility, basic human etiquette. Well, not Napoleon. In 1804, he looked Pope Pius VII dead in the eyes, took the imperial crown out of the Pope's hands, and slapped it on his own head. Bold move. This wasn't just a power flex. It was a full-body authoritarian stretch. It screamed, "I don't need your divine approval, I brought my own." Remember, this was the same guy who claimed to defend the ideals of the French Revolution. Liberty, equality, fraternity, and also absolute dictatorship, I guess. The revolution got rid of kings, and this guy turned around and said, "But what if I'm king, but with a cooler hat?" And voila, Emperor Napoleon I. Long live the guy who totally missed the point. The not-so-short legend. You've probably heard Napoleon was short, but let me tell you, he wasn't. The guy was about 5'6" or 5'7", totally average height for a French dude in the 1800s. But British cartoonists, those shady meme lords of the 19th century, decided to turn him into a pocket-sized tyrant to make him look ridiculous. And it worked even to this day. So congratulations, England. You invented height-based bullying as international propaganda. The result? A century of jokes, a psychological stereotype, hello Napoleon complex, and countless short kings side-eyeing history books. Meanwhile, Napoleon was out here steamrolling Europe in platform boots and vibes. So no, he wasn't a tiny gremlin ruling from a high chair, just a regular-sized egomaniac with a very irregular sense of personal boundaries. Oh cool, let's bring back slavery. So much for liberty and equality, right? In 1702, Napoleon pulled a full plot twist villain reveal by reinstating slavery in French colonies, just a few years after the revolution had actually banned it. Guadeloupe, Martinique, and others were told, "Surprise! You're enslaved again." Classy move from a guy who supposedly championed Enlightenment values. Why'd he do it? Economics. Colonial sugar profits were more important than human freedom, apparently. And if enslaving people wasn't bad enough, he followed it up by sending troops to crush revolts, most infamously in Haiti, which would later hand him one of his most embarrassing defeats. So yeah, Napoleon's version of revolution was liberty for me, chains for you. If hypocrisy had a mascot, it'd be this guy in a fancy hat yelling orders while tearing up human rights like they were optional fine print. Wait, this dude wasn't even French? Okay, let's get this straight. Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of the French, destroyer of monarchies, master of baguette-based world domination, wasn't even French by birth. He was born in 1769 on Corsica, just months after France snatched the island from Genoa. That means our boy was technically Corsican with Italian roots, raised speaking Italian, and probably dreaming of pasta. not Paris. French nobles and military elites never let him forget it either. They mocked his accent, his background, and probably his lunch order. So, what did he do? Oh, just went on to conquer half of Europe, crown himself emperor, and erase any doubt that Corsican kids with a chip on their shoulder can absolutely overcompensate. Being the outsider fueled his whole overachieving supervillain arc. Napoleon wasn't just fighting countries. He was fighting every aristocrat who snubbed his weird last name in roll call. Love? Nah, I need a womb. Napoleon really said, "Till death do us part," unless you're infertile. In the year 1809, after years of passionately writing love letters to Josephine like a French Shakespeare on espresso, he ditched her like old laundry because she couldn't give him a son. Cue the dramatic breakup, Josephine sobbing in her palace, Napoleon saying, "It's not you, it's dynastic survival." His solution? Marry Marie-Louise of Austria, the teenage daughter of his former enemy, to secure a political alliance and a baby. And yes, she delivered the heir like a royal Amazon Prime order. So much for romance. Napoleon literally swapped soulmates for a uterus with a passport. Love might conquer all, but Napoleon preferred conquering wombs and empires in one efficient transaction. March of the Morons. What's the worst place to fight a war in winter? If you said literally anywhere in Russia, congratulations, you're already smarter than Napoleon in 1812. This man took 600,000 troops on a winter road trip across frozen wastelands, because apparently maps and common sense weren't part of his strategy. Russia didn't even fight him much. They just burned everything and let the cold do the rest. Genius move! By the time Napoleon realized, oops, this was a terrible idea, it was too late. He lost over 80% of his army, not to battle, but to starvation, disease, frostbite, and dumb leadership. By the end, his once great army looked like a tragic snowman parade limping back to France. The guy who once ruled half of Europe got curb-stomped by weather and logistics. Napoleon didn't just lose a war, he lost to winter itself. Casually kidnapping the Pope. When Napoleon didn't get along with someone, he didn't argue. He just kidnapped them. And in 1809, that someone was literally the Pope. After a spicy theological disagreement over who controlled what in France, Napoleon decided to arrest Pope Pius VII and keep him as a holy hostage until 1814. This stunt was so outrageous, even Catholic monarchs side-eyed him like, "Dude, what are you doing?" The best part? In 1815, he wrote a letter pretending it wasn't his fault. Me? Kidnap the Pope? That doesn't sound like me. That letter surfaced at auction in 2025, confirming that Napoleon's PR skills were as shady as his politics. The press. Yeah, shut it down. Napoleon loved freedom, just not the kind where people criticized him. Once he grabbed power, one of his first hobbies, besides conquering everything, was killing off press freedom. He shut down dozens of newspapers and let only a handful survive, all singing his praises like it was state-mandated karaoke night. Everything printed had to go through the empire's ego filter. Any dissent, gone, satire, arrested. Editorial cartoons? Only if he looked majestic. Basically, he turned the media into one long press release for his personal greatness. This wasn't just censorship, it was insecurity in full bloom. For a guy so confident he crowned himself, he sure couldn't handle some spicy columns. Turns out, the real enemy wasn't Britain. It was a sassy journalist with a printing press. Napoleon's weirdest legacy. You'd think an emperor's legacy would be built on battles or reforms. Not this. Legend has it, after Napoleon died in 1821, someone straight up removed his crown jewels. Yes, folks, PP gone. His little general went AWOL, preserved like some cursed relic, passed from collector to collector, like a horrifying game of historical hot potato. It eventually ended up in the hands of a urologist, because of course, and now allegedly rests in a private collection, described as looking like a shriveled eel. So in death, Napoleon became the punchline of every awkward museum tour and Reddit thread. Whether true or myth, this story has been around for centuries. Historians still debate it, but honestly, no one's arguing about your policy on tariffs when your mummified manhood is trending. Weird stuff, right? The original art thief. Before there were Ocean's 11 or museum heists with laser grids, there was Napoleon, waltzing into cities and looting their art like it was a garage sale. During his European rampage, he borrowed masterpieces from Italy, the Netherlands, and basically any place he could invade, stuffing them into the Louvre like a hoarder with expensive taste. Ever heard of The Wedding at Cana by Veronese? Yeah, that's in Paris because Napoleon straight up took it. He famously bragged that the whole of Rome is in Paris, which is just a poetic way of saying, I stole your culture. He called it the civilizing mission of the French Empire. Everyone else called it theft. But hey, at least we got the world's classiest crime spree. If Napoleon hadn't lost Waterloo, he probably would have opened a second Louvre in Berlin by now. Trial? Never heard of it. In 1804, Napoleon decided he didn't like the Duke of Enghien, so instead of, investigating or having a trial, he just had the guy kidnapped, dragged across borders, and executed in a ditch. Boom. Problem solved. Except, for the whole murdering a nobleman without evidence part. The Duke probably wasn't even plotting anything, but Napoleon's paranoia was dialed to 11. Europe was horrified. Monarchs were terrified. This wasn't justice. It was straight-up mafia tactics in an empire uniform. The move backfired too, fueling fear and rebellion across Europe. But hey, why bother with legal stuff when you've got a firing squad and a gut feeling? Napoleon's definition of diplomacy was basically, if in doubt, just eliminate. Pyramids, plagues, and poor planning. Rewind to Napoleon's 1798 Egyptian campaign, which was supposed to be his exotic flex, to disrupt British trade and dazzle Europe with a little desert domination. What happened instead? Total flaming camel train of failure. The Battle of the Nile? The British Navy nuked his fleet. Disease ravaged his troops, supply lines broke, and local resistance was way tougher than expected. He dragged along scientists and artists like it was a bohemian field trip, but the soldiers just wanted to go home. Then, like a true military mastermind, Napoleon ditched his army and slipped back to France to do more politics, leaving thousands stranded in a sun-scorched mess. He spun it as a victory, of course. Sure, I lost everything and fled, but look, I got hieroglyphs. It was an expensive PR stunt with a dead army attached. Even his failures came with branding. King of the selfie. Napoleon didn't just want to be remembered, he wanted to be worshipped. So he commissioned painters and sculptors like it was an influencer brand deal, demanding hundreds of portraits where he looked taller, buffer, and more divine than reality allowed. One artist made him look like a Greek god. Another gave him the abs of a Renaissance superhero. Actual historians can't even agree which images are remotely accurate because Napoleon's vanity campaign was that aggressive. If Napoleon had Instagram, it'd be all oil-painted thirst traps with hashtags. The guy had more curated selfies than military victories. He basically invented PR spin with a paintbrush. And don't forget, every epic war loss was still followed by a majestic portrait of him staring off like a brooding philosopher king. The feminist's worst frenemy. Remember all those revolutionary slogans about equality and freedom? Yeah, Napoleon took one look at that and went, but not for women. In 1804, he dropped the Napoleonic Code, a law book that basically told women to sit down, stay married, and surrender their rights at the door. Women couldn't vote, own property independently, or file for divorce without jumping through more hoops than a circus poodle. Husbands had legal control over their wives like it was some sort of historical hostage situation. The same guy who claimed to modernize France decided women should legally be furniture. So next time someone says Napoleon was progressive, remind them his version of equality had a very strict men-only entrance policy. Beethoven's Breakup Symphony. Beethoven once thought Napoleon was a hero, an enlightened leader bringing freedom to Europe. So much so that he dedicated his third symphony to him. Adorable, right? Then Napoleon went full dictator and crowned himself emperor in 1804. Beethoven's response? Pure rage. He scratched Napoleon's name off the score so violently, he tore the paper. You know you've screwed up when Beethoven, literal human thunderstorm, revokes your theme music. The guy just wanted to compose for a revolutionary icon, not an egomaniac in gold robes. Napoleon didn't just lose a fan, he lost the soundtrack to his myth. Viva la Resistance! Invading Spain was supposed to be easy. Spoiler alert, it turned into Napoleon's Vietnam. In 1808, he tried to install his brother Joseph as king of Spain, assuming the locals would be chill about it. Instead, they erupted into bloody guerrilla warfare that lasted 6 years. The Peninsular War became a chaotic mess of ambushes, rebellions, and endless bloodshed. Spanish fighters harassed French troops constantly, and British forces, led by a guy named Wellington, you may have heard of him, jumped in to make Napoleon's life even worse. His army got chewed up and the morale tanked. This simple occupation became a black hole for French resources and reputation. It wasn't just a bad idea, it was geopolitical quicksand. By the end, Napoleon was losing more than just battles. He was losing empires, one bad call at a time. Delays, reign, and total defeat. Waterloo, the epic finale where Napoleon's comeback turned into a faceplant. After returning from exile like a boss-level villain, he faced off against the British and Prussians. His fatal mistake? Delaying his attack because the ground was too muddy. Seriously. Europe's future was decided by a weather report. That gave the Allies just enough time to regroup and kick his imperial backside into historical oblivion. There's debate over whether he was sick, indecisive, or just out of luck, but whatever the reason, the timing was catastrophic. Once the Prussians arrived, it was over. Napoleon's dreams ended in a soggy field in Belgium. No final twist, no grand redemption. Just a tactical facepalm that made him look like the emperor of bad decisions. Hero or tyrant? Even 200 years later, no one can decide if Napoleon was a revolutionary genius or a glorified dictator in a fancy hat. Some see him as a military mastermind who modernized Europe. Others see a warmongering egomaniac who trampled liberty under polished boots. The truth? Well, he's probably both. Built schools and legal systems, sure. Also crowned himself, censored everything, and waged wars like it was a hobby. He gave us the Napoleonic Code and the Peninsular War. He's like if Steve Jobs and Darth Vader had a really confusing French baby. Historians still argue, YouTubers still debate, and Reddit is still fighting about his height. Love him or hate him, you can't ignore him. And that's the most Napoleon thing of all. And there you have it. Napoleon, the tiny warlord with a god complex, the man who made dictatorship look fashionable, colonialism profitable, and emotional instability somehow iconic. What do you think of Napoleon? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.